There's a moment that every man experiences when the power dynamic completely shifts. It's the moment she realizes you're genuinely no longer interested, not playing games, not using tactics. You've simply moved on. And suddenly, everything changes. Today, we're talking about the Stoic shift in power, when your indifference becomes your greatest strength. This isn't about manipulation or revenge. This is about what happens when a man truly reclaims his mental sovereignty and stops seeking validation from anyone else. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." When a woman realizes you're no longer pursuing her attention, something primal kicks in. It's not about gender dynamics or playing games. It's basic human psychology. We value what we can't have and take for granted what's always available. But here's what most men miss. This only works when your withdrawal is genuine, when you've actually moved on mentally and emotionally, when you're not sitting in your room hoping she'll notice and come back. That's still being reactive. That's still giving her control over your emotional state. True Stoic withdrawal means you've genuinely shifted your focus to what you can control, your mission, your goals, your character development. You're not withdrawing to get a reaction. You're withdrawing because you have better things to do with your time and energy. Seneca said, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." When you truly end your emotional investment in someone who doesn't value you, you create space for something better to enter your life. The power in this moment isn't that she suddenly wants you back. The power is that it no longer matters to you whether she does or not. You've broken the cycle of seeking external validation. You reclaimed your mental sovereignty. This is when you become truly dangerous, when you become indifferent to outcomes. Let's break down exactly what happens during this transformation and why it's so powerful. When a woman realizes you're no longer pursuing her attention, something primal kicks in. It's not about gender dynamics or playing games. It's basic human psychology. We value what we can't have and take for granted what's always available. But here's what most men miss. This only works when your withdrawal is genuine, when you've actually moved on mentally and emotionally, when you're not sitting in your room hoping she'll notice and come back. That's still being reactive. That's still giving her control over your emotional state. True Stoic withdrawal means you've genuinely shifted your focus to what you can control, your mission, your goals, your character development. You're not withdrawing to get a reaction. You're withdrawing because you have better things to do with your time and energy. Seneca said, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." When you truly end your emotional investment in someone who doesn't value you, you create space for something better to enter your life. The power in this moment isn't that she suddenly wants you back. The power is that it no longer matters to you whether she does or not. You've broken the cycle of seeking external validation. You've reclaimed your mental sovereignty. This is when you become truly dangerous, when you become indifferent to outcomes. Let's get one thing clear. Stoicism isn't about being cold or emotionless. It's about emotional discipline. It's about responding rather than reacting. It's about maintaining your center regardless of external circumstances. When you're no longer interested in someone who once controlled your emotional state, you're demonstrating mastery over your own mind. This is what the Stoics called autarky, self-sufficiency. You're complete within yourself. Epictetus taught, "Wealth consists in not having great possessions, but in having few wants." This applies to relationships too. When you stop wanting validation, attention, or approval from someone else, you become wealthy in the truest sense. You have everything you need within yourself. But here's the tactical advantage. People can sense desperation from a mile away. They can also sense genuine indifference. When someone realizes you're not playing games, not using tactics, but have genuinely moved on, it creates a psychological shift. You become unpredictable. You become harder to categorize or control. This isn't about becoming a stone-cold machine. You can still care about people. You can still form meaningful connections. But you do it from a position of strength, not need. You engage because you choose to, not because you have to for your emotional well-being. The Stoic man loves deeply but holds lightly. He invests in relationships but doesn't make them his entire identity. When someone shows you they don't value your presence, you adjust accordingly. not out of anger or hurt, but out of simple logic and self-respect. This is mental discipline in action. When she realizes you're genuinely no longer interested, several things typically happen. First, there's confusion. She expected you to keep pursuing, keep trying, keep proving yourself. When you don't, it breaks her prediction model. You become unpredictable. Then comes the testing phase. She might reach out casually, post something she knows you'll see, or create situations where you'll interact. She's testing whether your indifference is real or just another tactic. This is where most men fail. They think the game is working and they re-engage emotionally. But the Stoic man, he remains consistent. He's polite but detached. He's not rude or vindictive. He simply treats her like any other person in his life. No special attention, no emotional investment. His energy is focused elsewhere. Here's what happens next. She starts to see you differently. The man who used to be predictable, who used to orbit around her attention, is now operating from his own center. You're not trying to impress her. You're not seeking her approval. You're just being yourself, focus on your own path. This creates what psychologists call the scarcity effect. Something that was once abundant, your attention, is now scarce. But more importantly, she starts to question her own value in your life. If you, someone who once pursued her, are now indifferent, what does that say about her? But here's the crucial point. None of this matters if you're still emotionally invested in her reaction. The power only comes when you've genuinely moved on, when you're not checking to see if she's watching, when you're not calculating your moves for maximum impact. True Stoic power comes from genuine detachment. You're not trying to make her jealous or regret her decisions. You're simply living your life according to your own values and priorities. She's free to be part of that life or not. The choice is hers, but the outcome doesn't control your emotional state. The real transformation isn't in how she responds to your indifference. The real transformation is what happens inside you when you stop being emotionally reactive to other people's choices. You start to notice how much mental energy you were wasting on things outside your control. You realize how much of your self-worth was tied to external validation. You see how reactive you were to other people's moods, decisions, and behaviors. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "Confine yourself to the present." When you stop living in the future scenario where she might want you back, or the past where things were different, you start living in the present moment. You start focusing on what you can actually control. This is where the real power lies. Not in her reaction, but in your transformation. You become a man who operates from his own center. Your happiness isn't dependent on anyone else's choices. Your self-worth isn't tied to external validation. You start making decisions based on your own values, not on what will get you attention or approval. You start pursuing goals that matter to you, not goals that will impress others. You become internally motivated rather than externally driven. This transformation is visible to everyone around you, not just her. People start treating you differently because you're carrying yourself differently. You have a centered presence that comes from inner stability, not external circumstances. The Stoic man understands that true strength comes from inner discipline, not outer circumstances. When you master your own mind, you become unshakable regardless of what's happening around you. So, how do you actually implement this? First, understand that this isn't a tactic you turn on and off. This is a fundamental shift in how you operate as a man. Start by identifying where you're seeking validation in your life. Where are you being reactive instead of responsive? Where are you giving other people control over your emotional state? Then redirect that energy into your mission. What are you building? What are you working toward? What goals matter to you regardless of who's watching or approving? Practice Stoic exercises daily. Morning reflection. What can I control today? Evening reflection. Where was I reactive instead of responsive? This builds mental discipline over time. When someone shows you they don't value your presence, adjust accordingly. Not out of anger, but out of simple logic. Why would you invest time and energy where it's not valued or appreciated? Most importantly, make this about becoming a better man, not about getting a specific outcome with a specific person. The goal isn't to make her want you back. The goal is to become a man who doesn't need anyone else's approval to feel complete. Focus on your physical health, your financial situation, your skills, your character. Build a life that you're proud of regardless of who's in it. This is what true masculine strength looks like. Complete self-reliance combined with capacity to love deeply but hold lightly. The moment she realizes you're no longer interested isn't about her at all. It's about you becoming the man you were meant to be before you started seeking validation from others. Epictetus said, "No one can hurt you without your permission." When you stop giving people permission to control your emotional state through their choices, you become truly free. This is the Stoic shift in power. Not power over others, but power over yourself. Not manipulation, but mastery. Not games, but genuine strength. The strong man operates from abundance, not scarcity. He loves deeply, but doesn't need love to feel complete. He values relationships, but doesn't make them his entire identity. Build yourself into a man who doesn't need to be chosen, because he's already chosen himself. Build yourself into a man who doesn't need external validation, because he has internal certainty. That's when everything changes. That's when the real power begins. Stay strong. Stay focused. And remember, the only person you need to impress is the man you were yesterday. Iron Brain Theory. Building unshakable men, one mind at a time.